Hey guys! In today's video, I bring you a surprising and chilling story. Discover the incredible journey of Serafina Devereux, a teacher who faced a near-death experience and, from that revelation, transformed her world. She challenged dogma and embraced a divorce, the revelation that freed me, paving the way for a life filled with truth, freedom, and passion. What she saw and felt on the other side will leave you speechless. So before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Get ready for an intense and transformative journey. I am Serafina Devereux, a teacher in New Orleans, and from a young age I learned to believe in the sacredness of marriage. I remember the nights when my mother told stories of eternal love, where the union between two souls was unbreakable, a promise made to heaven. At 25, I married a man who, at the time, symbolized the realization of a sacred dream, a pact that sealed the hope of a bright future. In the beginning, every gesture, every look exchanged reinforced the belief that our love was a divine alliance, destined to resist all adversity. I walked every day with the feeling that my marriage was a sanctuary of faith, where God's presence protected us and illuminated our paths. However, even immersed in such a deep conviction, there were silent moments when an uneasiness crept into my mind. During classes, as I explained the charms of literature and history to my students, my thoughts got lost in memories of more passionate and vibrant times. In moments of solitude, when the routine seemed too heavy, I asked myself quietly, does what we eternally swore still live within us? These doubts were whispers that, however timid they were, threatened to crumble the facade of certainty that he so cherished. Even so, I stood firm, wearing the armor of tradition and faith. Every morning, when I got up, I tried to remember the days when love was intense and palpable, even if for a brief moment. So, between the expectation of a reunion with lost affection and the resignation of following a path that seemed predestined, I began to report the journey that would transform my existence. This is the beginning of a story where the sacred and the profane intertwine, giving way to an unexpected transformation that will challenge everything I believed. During those early years, time seemed to move slower, lulled by the innocence of newfound love. I still remember our wedding day as if every detail had been carved into my memory. The scent of fresh flowers, the glow of smiles, and the comforting warmth of the hugs that sealed our destiny. Each morning was an invitation to rediscover the magic of small gestures. My husband's loving gaze, the whispers of, "I love you," shared in the early morning silence, and the feeling that, together, we were invincible. There was a time when our conversations lasted until dawn. I remember long nights when he told me his dreams and fears, while I, enchanted, described the stories I had read and imagined new worlds for us. In one of these moments, as we walked along the riverbank, he held my hand with a tenderness that seemed to transcend the physical. "Serafina," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "our love is like the river, constant, even when it seems like everything around it changes." These words stuck in my heart, reinforcing the belief that what we had was a divine gift, destined to last beyond the limits of time. The vibrant energy of those years was almost palpable. We walked hand in hand through the streets of New Orleans, and every corner seemed to celebrate our union with a symphony of colors and sounds. Together, we discovered new places and laughed at the unexpected things that life presented us with. I felt completely surrounded by an aura of happiness, where every gesture, every laugh shared strengthened the alliance that we had sworn to honor forever. However, even in the midst of this intense happiness, small doubts appeared like distant, almost imperceptible whispers. In moments of introspection, I questioned whether the perfection of that beginning could withstand the ravages of time. However, the faith that nourished our love, as well as the promises made under God's watchful eye, always dispelled these uncertainties. As the years passed, what had once been a sea of promises began to turn into an ocean of silence. I found myself increasingly alone in a relationship that before was full of sweet words and gestures of affection. Little by little, the shared laughter gave way to long pauses, and the passionate dialogues turned into silent monologues. On an afternoon that seemed as ordinary as any other, I sat by the window watching the rain falling on the streets of New Orleans, and I wondered, with a lump in my throat, where we had lost the path we once walked together. I remember one occasion when, after a particularly heavy day, my husband commented almost mechanically, "Serafina, we're just going through the motions." His words echoed without emotion, and in that instant, I realized that the deep conversations which had once fueled our dreams had dissipated. I tried in vain to revive the warmth that had once existed, but each attempt was met with a distant look and a brief response. "This is not the time," he said, as if each word was measured and controlled by the silence that enveloped us. As I walked through the empty hallways of the house, I heard the echo of my own steps, and each sound seemed to reinforce the loneliness that settled into our days. The hope of a reunion with lost love slowly faded, leaving behind a feeling of emptiness and resignation. One night, after a silent dinner, I got up to get a glass of water, and as I walked down the hall, I heard an inner voice whisper, "Why allow silence to dictate the course of your life?" These words, although soft, awakened in me a restlessness that insisted on breaking the spell of indifference. I looked for a spark of emotion in his eyes, a sign that, even if for a brief moment, the man who had once won me over was present. But the reflection he saw was that of a stranger, trapped in a routine of distance and lovelessness. So at that moment I understood that something needed to change. That silence was a prison that threatened to steal the essence of our love. The weight of loneliness installed itself gradually, like a shadow that extends without realizing its arrival. I found myself waking up every day with a heavy heart, carrying the feeling of living an existence divided between what was expected and what was achieved. The mornings were filled with a silence that spoke louder than any words of affection. I walked the streets of New Orleans with my mind immersed in melancholy thoughts, remembering the days when simple gestures and exchanged smiles were enough to warm the soul. One afternoon, while reviewing papers in my classroom, I received an unexpected phone call. On the other side, my husband's voice sounded distant and monotonous. "Serafina, I'm not in the mood to talk today," he said, not showing any concern about the cold tone that accompanied him. These words, simple and devoid of emotion, reinforced the feeling of being trapped in a relationship that had become a mere obligation. I responded with a restrained tone, trying to hide the pain that threatened to overflow, but words failed me, and silence was the only answer left between us. In the midst of this internal turmoil, I sought refuge in moments of solitude where introspection turned into silent company. In the mirror, I saw the reflection of a woman who had lost part of herself, a teacher who, although respected by her students, felt invisible in the depths of her own existence. During a solitary walk through an ancient park, I watched the leaves slowly fall from the trees, as if each leaf carried with it a fragment of what was left of hope. The wind whispered ancient secrets, and I wondered if true love, the one that warms and illuminates, could still be found again, or if I was condemned to live in the shadow of a lackluster marriage. At these times, the feeling of guilt was mixed with loneliness. He asked me if in some way I was contributing to the distance, if my own resignation was fueling the abyss between us. The emotional burden was so heavy that sometimes existence itself felt like a constant battle against the crumbling of everything I had ever dreamed of. This internal struggle, silent and relentless, led me to believe that I was, finally, trapped in a destination with no way out, where hope was fading amid unshed tears. As I walked through a rainy afternoon, the weight of years of loneliness and doubt seemed to finally pile up unbearably. I was lost in thought, trying to unravel the tangle of emotions that tormented me, when suddenly, I felt the ground give way beneath my feet. It was as if time had slowed down and the world had become a blur around me. The moment I lost my balance, everything got mixed up. The rain, the sounds of the city, and an internal whirlwind of anguish. As I fell, my mind was filled with inexplicable dread. I remembered the countless times the silence in my home had consumed me, and at that exact moment, the echo of those memories became deafening. In a mix of despair and resignation, I muttered without realizing it, "Is this the only way out?" As if I was waiting for an answer to dispel the emptiness that invaded me. The sensation was of floating, as if the body had been stripped of its shape, leaving me with only the consciousness that was observing from the outside. I could see my own body on the ground, motionless, as the rain continued to fall around me, a silent witness to my fall. The world seemed to have slowed down, and every drop of water became a symbol of my pain and loneliness. In this state of restlessness, a thought cut through the silence. I am falling not only physically, but also into an emotional abyss. The irony of this realization almost made me scream, but the sound was swallowed up by the storm and the distant murmur of the city. For a brief moment, the feeling of impending doom mixed with the hope that perhaps this was the harbinger of a much-needed change. As I was drawn into an unknown void, the crumbling of what was left of my routine became almost palpable. Every second seemed to stretch into an eternity, and the fear of the unknown intertwined with freedom from an oppressive past. What began as an accidental fall proved to be the threshold for something much greater, an invitation to question whether my existence, marked by years of conformity and pain, could finally be reborn from its own ashes. As darkness seemed to swallow every vestige of my being, a faint light began to creep across the horizon of that silent abyss. The light, initially weak and timid, slowly grew, revealing contours that were previously hidden in the shadows. In the midst of so much confusion, I heard a soft but firm voice that echoed like a whisper of hope. "Seraphina, allow the light to penetrate your heart," said the presence as the intensity of the glow softened the shadows around me. I felt a surprising calm, as if each ray of light dissolved the knots of anguish that enveloped me. In a mix of amazement and relief, I began to understand that that light was not a mere escape from the dark, but rather a revelation, an invitation to confront what I had always avoided. I, floating between fear and serenity, heard the voice again. "Why do you allow yourself to be consumed by fear? The love that once enlightened you still pulsates within you." His words, like music, penetrated deeply, bringing back memories of happier days, of sincere smiles and promises spoken with fervor. As the glow intensified, the figures forming in the light took on blurred outlines, but carried an aura of compassion and understanding. It seemed that those silhouettes, even without a defined face, were carriers of ancestral wisdom, ready to help me rediscover the path I had lost. In an instant of clarity, I realized that that light was the embodiment of a new beginning, the necessary break from the shackles of fear and doubt. The voice returned, now closer, almost as if it poured over me. "Do not fear, Seraphina. Every shadow is just a reminder of how much you have already lived and how much you can still flourish." His words vibrated in my soul, awakening in me a feeling of freedom that I had long been unaware of. At that exact moment, I felt that the light not only illuminated the darkness but also the depths of my being, revealing the truth that had been hidden beneath years of conformity and resignation. In that moment of clarity, I was drawn into an inevitable confrontation with the truths I had so avoided. Immersed in the gloom, I relived every fragment of the past, the silent prayers that echoed on lonely nights, the kind gestures that turned into mere formality, and the weight of a guilt that for so long prevented me from daring to question the dogmas that imprisoned me. In the midst of that mystical dimension, an inner voice mixed with the presence of light resonated in an insistent and revealing way. "Seraphina, why do you submit yourself to the pain of a love that has faded? Why do you allow guilt and fear to prevent you from seeking the truth of what it means to live fully?" As the memories followed one another in a whirlwind, I realized that the truth, however harsh it was, carried with it the possibility of liberation. Each painful memory turned into a lesson, and each unshed tear revealed the need for a fresh start. I remembered the times when I tried with all my might to revive the affection, only to be met with cold responses and blank stares. "This is not the time," sounded like a persistent echo, reaffirming the distance that separated us. In this encounter with my own essence, the dialogue between my consciousness and the light intensified, and I found myself facing a crucial choice. You can continue living in the shadow of what is already gone, or allow the truth, however painful it may be, to guide you to a future where love is genuine and alive, murmured the voice, as if trying to tear the last resistance from me. Faced with the image of a marriage reduced to empty obligations, I understood that the true meaning of a union was not in the mere continuity of a ritual, but in the ability to transform pain into strength, silence into voice, and guilt into courage. As the revelation set in, I felt a subtle transformation, a release from the chains that imprisoned me. The truth, although raw and unforgiving, was also the first step towards rebuilding a life that deserved to be lived with authenticity and passion. And so, in that moment of deep introspection, I embraced the idea that change, no matter how scary it seemed, was essential for me to rediscover the essence of love and, above all, my own. When I regained full consciousness, I felt that I was not alone. William Monroe was there, with a calm look and a calm voice, as if he knew exactly what I needed at that moment. "Serafina, you don't have to carry this burden alone," he said, squeezing my hand with a comforting firmness. His words, soft and full of understanding, were like a balm for my torn soul. Shortly afterwards, Elizabeth Carter approached, bringing with her an air of contagious empathy. "My dear, sometimes we need to let go of what holds us back to embrace what truly sets us free," she murmured as her eyes shone with the conviction of someone who has faced similar internal battles. His words seemed to stitch together the broken pieces of my hope, revealing that support was within my reach, even in the midst of pain. It wasn't long before Robert Jenkins, my spiritual mentor, joined us. With his serene voice full of wisdom, he commented, "True faith is not limited to rigid dogmas, but manifests itself in the courage to seek light in the midst of darkness." His words echoed as a reminder that despite the conventions and traditions that had so bound me, I still possessed the power to choose a path that resonated with my heart. And then, in the midst of this unexpected support network, Daniel Freeman appeared, a young man with an enigmatic look and a shy smile, who seemed to carry within him the promise of a new beginning. "Serafina," he whispered, as if each word was an invitation to awaken from a long sleep. "There is a new chance, to be reborn, to leave the past and embrace a future where love is free and true." Each of them, with their words and gestures, illuminated parts of me that had long been in darkness. It was in this meeting, full of sincere dialogues and gestures of affection, that I felt the strength necessary to question the status quo and envision the possibility of a life full of meaning, far from the shackles that imprisoned me. As I emerged from this whirlwind of transformations, I felt the pulse of a new horizon opening up before me. Today, every dawn carries the promise of a fresh start, where the pain of the past turns into strength and scars become maps of resilience. The silence that once imprisoned me now dissolves into a whisper of freedom, inviting me to reinvent my own existence. With every step I take through the streets of New Orleans, I find the echo of a new destination, full of possibilities that previously seemed unattainable. With the support of friends who have come along my journey, I have learned that true rebirth comes from the courage to embrace uncertainty and allow love to rebuild itself, even if imperfectly. During long walks under the twilight sky, I hear my own inner voice, now more serene, saying, "You deserve to be happy. You deserve to live without the shackles of fear and guilt." This message, as delicate as it is powerful, resonates with every beat of my heart, reminding me that a fresh start is a right, not a privilege granted to a few. In this new phase, I leave behind the echoes of a past that, although painful, was essential for me to understand the depth of what really matters. The authenticity of feelings and the freedom to choose a path where love is not imposed, but spontaneous and renewing. On a peaceful afternoon, as the sun set and colored the horizon with tones that mixed hope and serenity, I felt a peace I had never known. Talking to Daniel Freeman, he commented with an encouraging smile, "Serafina, this is just the beginning. of a journey where every step is a victory over yesterday. So with a light heart and an open mind, I embrace the uncertainty of the future, with the conviction that I am finally writing my own story. That fresh start is not the end, but the awakening to a new life, where every day is a chance to rediscover love, joy, and most importantly, myself. As a new dawn dawned, I felt that the most anticipated chapter was finally unfolding before me. I, Serafina Devereaux, found in every ray of sunlight the opportunity to write a new beginning that, despite the scars of the past, carried the promise of days filled with authenticity and passion. Walking through the streets of New Orleans, I felt the freshness of freedom touch my skin, and with a light heart, I realized that the old me, marked by fears and guilt, no longer had a place in my life. That morning, while drinking coffee in a small cafe, I heard a conversation nearby that seemed to reflect my new reality. A young couple exchanged glances and smiles, as if the world was conspiring to celebrate that moment of pure connection. At the same time, my painful memories were mixed with the hope that Daniel Freeman, with his enigmatic gaze, had cherished days ago. Serafina, each new day is a chance to rewrite your destiny, he had told me with the conviction of someone who believes in the transformative power of love. As the streets filled with life, I realized that the fresh start was not just about leaving behind a marriage that had become a prison, but about embracing a new way of existing, where each choice was made based on the sincerity of feelings and the courage to reinvent oneself. The feeling was of being reborn, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, free from the shackles of conventions and dogmas that held me captive for so long. Talking to Elizabeth, who was on a bench in the park, she commented with a serene smile, "You deserve to experience the fullness of being truly happy, Serafina. The past is just a lesson that prepares us for the future." His words echoed in my soul, confirming the certainty that I had decided to follow a path of light and authenticity. With each step, the city revealed itself as a scenario full of possibilities, an invitation to explore new relationships, discover forgotten passions, and above all, celebrate the freedom of being. Today, I embrace this new beginning with an open heart, knowing that no matter what the future brings, the courage to rewrite my story will always be the light that guides me. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time,